Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from BR Hoops. Yeah, and it's about Pitt freshman Bub Carrington, who has done what Steven Adams did as a one-and-done player. He's declared for the NBA draft. He was terrific this year in his first year at Pitt, the youngest D1 hoop freshman guards in the country, and he was a 5-time player of the week in the ACC, and he's making a decision to move on. And Chris Mueller now joins us, and Chris, we'll start there with that one. I was kind of hoping he'd hang around just because I liked the backcourt tandem that he had. And there were 3 guards, actually, that played so well for Pitt. I was hoping they all would come back, but that's not going to happen. What do you think of this decision, and what do you think it is in terms of long-term? Because he's such a young player, he can develop over the next several years, and it may be looked at as a good #1 pick.
So I've seen, and good evening, Bob. Sorry I no-showed kind of like Mitch Keller did in the second inning of that game tonight. My apologies there. But no, I look at this a couple of different ways. One, the NBA's official draft site, and I think they actually do it through Bleacher Report, has him as the 26th pick. That's as of, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. NBADraft.net, which has been around forever, has him as the 8th pick in the draft, and that was updated less than a week ago. So there is a wildly divergent opinion on him among scouts, I would think, or at least the people who put these together. But I think it's a good move for him for this reason. This is an exceptionally weak draft class. It's perceived that way really by everybody that analyzes this sort of thing. Next year will be the Cooper Flag class. That'll be a much stronger class top to bottom. So this is Bub Carrington's chance, I think, to go have really good workouts. He's a lanky athlete. Jeff Capel thinks he might grow a little bit more. The guy has prototype size for the position for point guard in the NBA. And if the real concern is, can he hit outside shots more regularly, I'm willing to bet that as he gets towards the age of 20 and all he's doing is working on basketball for a living, he will become a better spot-up three-point shooter. I think this is a smart move by him because I think he's going to work out well, test well, and I think, Bob, that's going to end up maybe boosting his stock where he gets picked in the mid-teens. Interesting. You never know how it's going to go with those NBA first-round picks, but regardless, he'll be taken by somebody, and he's young enough where he can absorb that for a couple of years and just move along. I remember Steven Adams when he was here, and I honestly thought that Jamie Dixon could have used him a lot more. He didn't. He was gone. He turned out to be, but it took some time for him to be a $100 million player. And go before that, I remember Mark Blount. He was a guy that I used to really like here at Pitt. Then he goes overseas. He eventually got to the Boston Celtics, but it's unusual to see guys from Pitt go immediately to the first round or in the NBA and have immediate success. If they do, it's normally later, and I think this would apply to him. Yeah, well, I mean, I think he's going to be a guy that probably needs to get physically stronger, probably needs to put on 10, 15, pounds on a 6'5", 6'6" frame that's what, is he, $185 soaking wet. He needs to get probably closer to 200 pounds just because, as you know, I maybe need to explain this to some of our viewers who don't realize this, the NBA is an exceptionally physical league, and I mean like contact-oriented league regardless of position. He doesn't need to be great right away, though. In the NBA. He's probably a guy who you'd see his best when he's 21 years old and people go, oh, he's been in the league for so long. Well, he's still only 21 at that point. I think you give this guy a year or two to work on his game at that level, with that level of coaching. No disrespect to Capel or anyone else. It's just different, Bob. And I think you could have a real force, a real weapon at point guard with his length, with his athletic ability. I'll even say this is going to sound crazy. You give me a choice if I'm an NBA GM and I can either take at like pick 9 or 10, Reed Sheppard or Bub Carrington, I'm taking Carrington 10 times out of 10 and probably 100 out of 100 because there's real upside potential there. And yet Reed Sheppard's a guy who's getting talked about as a slam dunk top 5 pick. Tell me why I'm insane because I don't really understand it. Well, he put up a big season with Kentucky. We didn't see that here in Pittsburgh, but I guess there's reason to believe playing in that conference and some of the games he put out that he's going to be that player. I don't know. To me, it's a crapshoot sometimes with some of these guys. We'll see. We got a couple of basketball calls before we get back to the Pirates, so let's go to our #1 cock ring, Go One Better. Actually, we don't have that tonight, but you can still be #1 on our hearts. Big Tony from Greensburg. Go ahead, Big Tony.
Since I was a teenager, I've been on with you for 40 years, brother.
Holy cow. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I'm a long-time fan. I listen to Pony and Mueller every day, too. I love those guys.
Making good choices. I see that, Big Tony. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was watching about this Bronny James. Is there really? Is there even a chance he'll come here? And what kind of economic impact would that make for our city? And I'll hang up.
You know, Big Tony, I was looking at some of the odds makers on this topic today, and he's one of the leading. Duquesne is one of the leading landing spots for him. Now, I don't know if this is based on you can connect, 2 and 2 and the dots and get 4, or you might get 10 because he's a bigger name. Chris, I know of the relationship between LeBron James and the new head coach, but I also know that Bronny is a guy who's going to want to go, I would think, to bigger platforms.
Nah.
You don't think so?
He might want to. He might want to, but I don't know if he's a Power 5 player. Here are the odds I saw today. The favorite was Ohio State. We know LeBron loves Ohio State in general. Big fan of that school and that program. The second favorite I saw was Oregon, and if people need me to explain that one, I'm happy to. Oregon is a Nike school. Phil Knight is their biggest donor. He's the founder of Nike. Whose shoes does LeBron wear? Nike. This would go beyond a shoe deal. Then the third place favorite was Duquesne because of the Drew Joyce-LeBron James relationship. And I saw LeBron quote tweeting Drew Joyce last night. Fourth was SMU because that's where Andy Enfield, who was just USC's coach, is now at, and now that's an ACC job. And then Duke was listed where I saw fifth in the odds. He's not going to Duke because, and this is the thing people have to understand, he's LeBron James Jr., but he's not good enough to play at a Duke or maybe even an Oregon or maybe, an ACC school. This guy needs to get bigger, stronger, better on offense, and guess where he can actually do that and play? And by the way, his future, if he does make it to the NBA and it's not just on like a charity scholarship because his dad wants him to play, is as a point guard. What position did Drew Joyce play? Point guard. He could actually stand to use time in the A-10, maybe 2 years in the A-10, get bigger, get stronger, develop an outside shot. You have the athletic ability to be good in the conference. People think this is crazy. I think it makes very good basketball sense.
It won't be Duke, though, because they have a whole bunch of high-end blue chippers coming in for sure.
He's not good enough,
No,
Bob. He's just not good enough to play there with those
He's
guys.
not one of the guys they've chosen. So it would be some team other than maybe these blue bloods, but his name recognition. Can you imagine what it would be like if all of a sudden LeBron James and he brings
You want to
Drake
go in on season tickets, Bob? Me and you, we'll get a couple of seats. We'll split them with Pony and a couple of my other buddies.
Yeah, it would be pretty wild. Anyway, back to the lines we go. We have Curry in Tarentum. I'm sorry, it's Kurt. I don't know where I got Curry. I'm sorry. Kurt in Tarentum. Go ahead.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Chris. Love the show. Hey, this is a baseball question. Today there was a catcher's interference, and the batter's awarded first base. But here's my beef. Last year, Milwaukee's playing Arizona in the playoffs, and Bryce Turnage swings wildly and cracks the catcher, Gabby Marino, in the side of the head. He was dazed and cut, and he had to leave the game. I want to know why they can't make a rule when a batter is carelessly swinging like that and hits the catcher. I say the batter should be out or out of the game.
Well, I would think it would depend on where he is in the batter's box also in that whole dynamic. I don't remember that specifically. I remember there was an injury, but Chris, do you remember the nuances of that?
No, I don't remember the nuances of that play, but if the batter started the at-bat in the batter's box, they did nothing wrong. Joe Block even said it on the TV side tonight, Bob. He said part of the whole thing with catchers framing more pitches than they ever have before is that these guys are creeping up closer to the batter than they ever have before. They used to, sit and crouch much further away from the actual batter. I don't agree with the call at all there. If you're going to try to frame pitches, that's going to be one of the dangers of doing so. And if the batter has a legal stance in the batter's box, the umpire can and should do absolutely nothing to them.
Got a couple of tweets here. Zach Williams says, fans will blame Keller for tonight's loss, but the offense didn't show up. No, I'm putting this on Keller. He got a lead, and, I expect him to be better with that lead against a team that is not all that great of a team, to be honest. It's sort of a rebuilding team. And he did not have that stuff in that second inning. So, it's one game. I'm not going to overreact to it. But at the same time, for him being the so-called ace, he's got to be better than what he is. And so far, this is a continuation of what we saw not at the beginning of last year, but also, Chris, the end of last year for Mitch Keller.
Yeah, he was bad after the All-Star break. You could just say it. I think his ERA post-All-Star break, it's a neat dividing line, was 5.59 for those starts. He wasn't good. He elevated the ball, and a lot of the optimism, people have the quiet optimism about what they could be this year, involves Skeens and Jones both being good when they're both here, but Keller giving them a legitimate number 3 pitcher. Like, he's not pitching like one. He's pitching like a guy at the very back of a rotation, and they expect more out of him, and they absolutely should.
Ray in Whitehall joins us right now on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. What's up, Ray?
Hey, how you doing? Keller tonight reminded me a lot of the last couple of years where a couple guys get on base and he has difficulty getting out of the jam. Gallo got the home run. Okay, the next 2 guys was catcher's interference and a ground ball.
Mm-hmm.
But then he didn't really get tough, and those guys, the Garcia pitch was pretty bad. So I'm concerned about that aspect. And I'm not really excited about the offense as a whole. I mean, I think we got, Davis and Hayes and Reynolds, but guys like Tellez and Connor Joe, I'm not sure over the long run if they're going to help us.
If they're the 2 guys you're hoping carry you on offense, you're not going to have a good offense. They're contributing players. This offense has to be Reynolds, Hayes, Cruz specifically, and Davis hopefully in time. Other than that, what you get, to me, would be a bonus, Chris. You have to be carried by the guys you expect to carry you, and those would be my guys.
Well, Sawinski, since they're going to face majority right-handers, Sawinski needs to produce as well. Him getting a home run off of a lefty and a bomb at that tonight was one of the few bright spots in this game. I think Pony described it on the show pretty well today. They have a lot of like B+ to C+ type of hitters, and that actually should be a decent recipe in Major League Baseball. You don't have a ton of easy outs normally in that lineup, at least on paper, guys who at least work counts, and usually that should work. I thought Williams, to my surprise, pitched a good game. But, Bob, to use a basketball analogy, it's like a starting 5 where everybody averages between like 9 and 14 points. There's no takeover player, but you expect everybody to contribute on a pretty regular, steady basis.
That is true. Tomorrow, the Nationals and Pirates will complete that series 12:35. And then home opener on Friday. We're due for a break. We'll take it, come back with more. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan.